The talk I'm going to give this evening is about happiness through valuation, which is based on the Discourses. As I start, I wanted to share something about this beautiful red shawl I am wearing. It's so beautiful. It feels so beautiful. It belonged to Elizabeth Patterson. I got it in a Mandalay jumble sale several years ago, and you can feel, you know, her dignity and beauty in it. It's from Paris. And it's very, I think, very beautiful. So, again, I'm going to talk about this incredible, powerful, amazing, quiet power that Baba put in the Discourses, a special and unique and methodology of happiness that he just slipped into the Discourses, and that we don't notice that much, called valuation. I'm a psychologist, and I can guarantee you, if you are among the millions of people who go to psychologists, counselors, therapists for all kinds of help for unhappiness, depression, sadness, I can guarantee you that they will not do a values check. They will not ask you about valuation. It's just not a part of mainstream psychology. We think of values as something that you teach to children. You know, you teach children honesty and moral values and so forth, and then you kind of get that done and you hope they have good values through life, but you don't think about it again. Baba said over and over again, and I will read it exhaustively because I'm in love with this concept. It's so simple and so true, that the key to happiness, the key to the freedom from the overbearing ego, is the capacity for true valuation, the capacity to see what is important. Baba said in the final declaration and other important points, he said, I have not come to establish anything. And I think that's very interesting. We have a sense that, apropos of what we were talking about, we have kind of a sense that Meher Baba loosened up the moral code a little bit. He loosened it up, you know. But certainly, if you asked Baba people, was he as moralistic as the messages that we get from religion or from society, and we would have said, no, he loosened things up. I don't think he loosened things up at all. If you read his words, you think about his example, he didn't loosen anything up. But what he did, pervasively, extensively, was he removed the sense of shame, of sin, of punishment, especially of fear. He entirely removed the concept of the fear of God. In fact, he said that fear lies behind the harmfulness of egoism. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about valuation. So that's what he did, and he did it so beautifully, so completely, that we feel freer. But in fact, we are still held to the same standards of love, of compassion, of truth, of responsibility. But we do so for the sake of happiness, for the sake of selfless service, for the positive ideals. And that's why I make a little joke that Baba was a humanistic psychologist. he was a humanist, in the sense that what he said over and over was, the inspiration to be good is to be happy now. Not beyond this life, but right now, in this life. And that's the essence of humanism. The one thing, though, both as I talk about this in the discourse, I do want to say, as we know, the avatar brings, the purpose of the avatar is to bring eternal happiness. Happiness, the happiness of bliss, immeasurable, infinite. And I would say, I'm going to read the middle of the discourses that pertain to valuation, but of course in every discourse, in discourse after discourse, there's a kind of crescendo at the end, where he says, if you really want to be happy, if you really want to be eternally happy, I am the way. So I just want to share that. Okay, but he did emphasize happiness. The next to last discourse in the last volume is called The Conditions of Happiness. And I wanted to read some of the conditions of happiness. He says, happiness is based on the removal of suffering through detachment. He says, every creature in the world is seeking happiness, and man is no exception. And he talks about the power of the drive for happiness, that whatever we do it for the sake of happiness. You know, when we seek knowledge, health, beauty, science, art, or literature, it is because man feels his pursuit of happiness is directly dependent upon them. Through all his endeavors and pursuits, man wants to be happy. Happiness is the ultimate motive power which drives him in all that he does. So happiness is the bomb of human psychology. So why aren't we happy? And he explains that the way we pursue happiness, man does not seek suffering, but it comes to him as an inevitable outcome of the very manner in which he seeks happiness. He seeks happiness through the fulfillment of his desires. But such fulfillment is never an assured thing. Hence, in the pursuit of desires, man is also unavoidably preparing for the suffering from their non-fulfillment. And so Baba goes on to say, we must find a different way to live in happiness apart from the seeking of desires. And he talks about contentment, which cuts out the harassment of self-created problems. That contentment is detachment, and contentment are basic keys to happiness. And then he talks about how is this contentment found? It is found through true love, which is awakened by the Master. It is found through selfless love. And happiness is found through self-forgetful love. And here is a wonderful quote that leads us into the concept of valuation. True happiness begins when a man learns the art of right adjustment to other persons And right adjustment involves self-forgetfulness and love. So how do we learn the art of right adjustment? How do we go about that? What does Baba tell us in the Discourses about right adjustment? I wanted to, before we move to valuation, I wanted to talk about the characteristics of very happy people. And I'm going to introduce at the beginning of these characteristics my theory that what makes very happy people happy is they have the capacity for automatic, instant, continual recognition of what is important in every moment. And they do it automatically, naturally. They know what is important. And that capacity is valuation. Very happy people are in a good mood, and they help other people around them be in a good mood. Very happy people look on the bright side, and they are poised. They're able to do their best and help others do their best. They are stable, but they are able to make changes when they need to. They take good care of themselves and others because they know everyone is important. They are not wasteful. They're not grasping, so they don't waste. They don't load their plate, and they take what they need. They have self-respect and self-confidence. They care about others, but they are not controlled by the opinions of others. They have clear values and strong beliefs, but they are not judgmental. They stand up for themselves and what they believe in. They make peace out of conflict and order out of chaos. They do not worry. They make conscious choices, and then they are confident. They don't obsess or hold on to the worries. They are confident they have done their best and move on. And they are able to continue to see what is important. And if they have to change their mind, then they change their mind and go in a different direction. They are creative and energetic for the good. And again, that the capacity to see what is important automatically, it arises in people who are wealthy and people who are of modest means, which is why you see happiness distributed across any group of people. They arise in that capacity to see what is important and just let go the unimportant is what their freedom and their energy and their creativity and their freedom from wastefulness all arise from. They can let go of the unimportant very quickly. And they are intentional. They are conscious, intentional people. If you ask a very happy person, why did you do that? They can tell you. They can explain. That's why I did that. I thought that might be best. And so I wanted to move on to what Baba gives us about that capacity for happiness, which is the power of true valuation. If you search the word valuation in the Discourses, it appears 15 times. Valuation. Valuation is not a word it's not a word like love or truth, or it's not a word that's on everybody's lips, but it appears in the Discourses 15 times. And it is because Baba talks, it appears mainly in two discourses, the nature of the ego and its termination, and in Maya. And so I wanted to talk about the concept of valuation as a method of reducing the strain of egoism. Baba opens the discourses on the nature of the ego and its termination by saying the ego is the center of conflict. However, he does explain that we need a strong ego. You need a strong ego as the guiding genius, as the director of life in order to achieve purposeful behavior. He says that a person without a strong ego is like a ship without ballast. It pops over here and there. It just is unstable. We need a strong ego for stability, purposefulness, achievement. But the problem with the ego is, as we know, this to me is just an amazing statement. He says, it is characteristic of the ego that it takes all. This is an absolute statement, and I think it's so funny as such. It is characteristic of the ego that it takes all that is unimportant as important, and all that is important as unimportant. That is an absolute statement that says, even though you need an ego, it's always wrong. Every single time. Every time the ego has to make a choice, it's going to choose the less important, the unimportant. That's what it does, which is very funny. So how do we, so Baba says, when he explains that the ego always chooses the unimportant, he says, the ego attempts to solve conflicts through false evaluation. So this useful but annoying apparatus of the personality called the ego attempts to solve conflict through false valuation. And Baba says conflict can be solved through true valuation. The elimination of conflict is possible only through conscious control over the psychic forces in the subconscious, and this control can be permanently attained only through the repeated exercise of true valuation in all cases of conflict. It's simple. What he's saying is the ego is always going to be wrong, and the best method is true valuation in cases of conflict. To be free from conflict, we must always make the right choice and unfailingly prefer the important to the unimportant. The choice has to be both intelligent and firm in all cases of conflict, the important as well as the unimportant. And he goes on to repeat, true valuation must govern all matters. That intelligent and firm choice has to be repeatedly exercised in all matters, small or great, for the ordinary worries of life are not in any way less important than the serious problems with which the mind is confronted in times of crisis. So he's giving us that answer to reduce conflict in our lives to the point that we remain calm, detached, energetic, free of worry, able to help others, not to be buffeted about by praise or blame, that contentment is the shortest route is valuation. I think that's very interesting. the last paragraph of the last section, and I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, because this is the central point that I'm trying to make in this talk, and I'm also going to provide a model, a method of valuation. I've written a 5-step method of valuation, and I encourage people to use it. But again, in the last section of the last paragraph of the first section of the nature of the ego and its termination, disintegration of ego center through right valuation. He really wants to make this point. He wants to get this point across. And he says, in the ripeness of evolution comes the momentous discovery that life cannot be understood and lived fully as long as it is made to move around the pivot of the ego. And man is then driven by the logic of his own experience to find the true center of experience and reorganize his life in the truth. And the other section of that Baba really focuses on valuation is Maya. Before I leave the ego, I wanted to read one more section which I use in this 5-part model that I'm going to share, which is the ideal of motive power. That when conflicts are brought to light, it is possible to resolve them through intelligent and firm choice. The most important requirement for the satisfactory resolution of conflict is motive power or inspiration. So, and Baba says, analysis in itself may aid choice, but choice will always remain a barren and ineffective intellectual preference unless it is vitalized by zeal for some ideal appealing to the deepest and most significant strata of human personality. So Baba says, what precedes valuation, choosing the highest values, is an overarching ideal. And then he gives a very famous quote about modern psychology. Modern psychology has done much to reveal the sources of conflict, but it has yet to discover the methods of awakening inspiration or supplying the mind with something which makes life worth living. And the establishment of the true ideal is the beginning of right valuation. Right valuation, in turn, is the undoing of the constructions of the ego, which thrives on false valuation. Any action which expresses the true values of life contributes towards the disintegration of the ego, which is a product of ages of ignorant action. So as we move towards valuation, it must be in the service of some ideal. And again, we don't, just as we don't bring values to conscious thought, we don't often bring the ideal to conscious thought. I was thinking about that. In my work, I have occasion to often ask people if they are a danger to themselves or others. I probably have to ask that question 15 or 20 times a week. Are you a danger to yourself or others? Are you at risk of suicide? It's something that my job requires me to constantly look into. And I follow up that question with the further question, what are your protective factors? What keeps you going? And when people answer that question, what are your protective factors, they express their highest ideal. They don't know it, but that is what they are expressing. And they say, I couldn't do this to my family, I wouldn't want to hurt this past week, a man said to me, well, my mama, she worked so hard, she raised 8 kids, and by herself, I couldn't do that to mama. That is his highest ideal. His highest ideal is love for his family. And so people live in their highest ideals, but they don't bring them to consciousness. So that's just something to think about, to bring to consciousness our highest ideals as we use them as the motive power for valuation. So I hope I know I'm stating this repeatedly, but I'm just really trying to drive home the concept that Baba gave us this method, and it's easy, it's conscious. You don't have to go into the deep unconscious mind in the sense of what happened to you when you were a small child or this type of thing. You can look into the unconscious mind regarding your wants and fears of today, and you can look into the unconscious mind regarding your ideals and your highest motives. And it's right there, it's today. So I think that's very interesting, and I include that in this 5-step model that I'm going to provide, this 5-step method. But to beat that dead horse of valuation, I'm going to go to Maya. Because again, he says the same things. Maya, part 1, false values. I have to do my discourse thumping. Discourse thumping. I'm discourse thumper. The false values, and the importance of understanding the falsehoods of Maya. On page 148, he said, the price of mistakes in valuation. And he talks in Maya, he talks about truth and falsehood extensively. Maya is, and I don't like to get into the really deep spiritual stuff. I always say I'm only smart enough to be a psychologist, and it's true. But he says, to understand Maya, or the principle of ignorance, is to know half of the truth of the universe. So Maya is infinite ignorance, and it's a match for infinite truth. But if you want to study Maya, go for it. But what I'm interested in is creating happiness, creating peace, resolving conflict through valuation. And here he says that false values are due to the influence of subjective wants. We want something. And so we have our values conform to what we want, rather than perhaps the highest truth that can be applied to that situation. And as we become conscious of that, we can overcome it. False values are derivative and relative. As if lusts and longings increase, the corresponding objects assume greater importance. If they subside in their intensity or urgency, the objects lose much of their importance. So again, it's that power of recognizing and choosing the important. All of these are false values because they are inherent in the objects themselves. We are confronted by the objects of Maya, and we say, I want that. And conform our values to the objects. I'm going to skip ahead to the second Discourse of Maya, and where he says, he talks about functional and structural troubles. And that, there's an analogy in psychology he says functional troubles are caused when, and he uses an analogy of a disease which is arising in the irregularity of the functioning of an organ. Functional troubles arise from irregularity of something, when something is not working well. And they can be solved by making things work better. Structural troubles are when a vital organ is structurally diseased, and they are of a much graver nature. And both types of troubles can be corrected, but it is far easier to correct merely functional troubles than to correct structural troubles. And it's because and I want to use that analogy of functional and structural to the idea of using valuation. In our lives, the functional aspects of our lives are how we live every day. And the structural aspects of our lives are the major ongoing decisions that we have made, where to live, who to marry, what work to do, the structure of our lives. And they are harder to change than functional choices. But we must apply the same valuation to them. In the examples that I've given, I don't. I just use functional examples. But the same methods of valuation must be applied carefully, over time, thoughtfully, to the structural conflicts of our lives to determine if the structure has to change. So I just wanted to add.
Could you give an example of a structural problem versus a functional problem?
Sure. The functional problems, the functional conflicts, are the conflicts that we have every day. Functional conflict would be like these shoes. These shoes are a functional conflict. I call them my tippy shoes. I'm serious. When my husband sees these shoes, oh God, she's wearing those shoes. They're platforms. No, I'm serious. They're platform shoes. And they are very comfortable and I just love to wear them because I roll forward and they're very open and free. Now, I do occasionally fall when I wear these shoes. So that is a minor functional trouble. Are you going to wear clothing, or you're going to use a product or whatever? That doesn't work very well. So, it's very, very small, but that is a functional example. So when I know I'm going to be walking a great distance, I don't wear my favorite shoes. The value being, safety, practicality. So often, and in the examples I give with my model, it's practicality. So often. And very happy people are very practical. They're very practical. They're not chasing rainbows, and they're quite practical. And Baba says practicality and spirituality are the same. So I do without my tippy shoes. That's a very small functional issue. The choices we make every day, the food we eat, choosing healthy food, whatever. Those are all functional choices made on the basis of valuation. We want something that tastes good, but it might actually make us sick. So we have to follow the values of practicality, of health, of consideration also for other people who will have to deal with us when we're sick. Structural conflicts are conflicts that we have in the very structure of our lives. A very common, structural conflict is in marriage. If people cannot work out their marriages, and Baba says there are worse things than divorce. So that would be, or if someone is in a job that just makes them unhappy every single day, that's a structural problem. And they really need to look deeply into that. One of the issues with putting all our interest into structural problems is we think, well, if I only was married to somebody else, if I only had this job and not that job, if I only lived in San Diego. Don't get me started on San Diego. It's my dream place, Anyway, if I only lived in San Diego, I'd be perfectly happy. So, stuff like that. But then you find, of course, when Baba says, when you go to San Diego, you go to outer space, and you'll bring yourself to anywhere you go, and whatever are the issues that you have in the subconscious, the conflicts, the wants, the whatever, you'll bring them to San Diego. So, but those are the structural problems of life, and they do require a great patience and a great wisdom and caution. And the reason why, in a sense, I always say to people, there are very powerful forces that keep us where we are. People will come to me and say, why can't I change? Why can't I make a change? And I say, because there are very powerful forces that have created your life. So it's not easy to change them. The decisions that we make are driven, and the life we are living is driven by a powerful momentum of life after life. It's driven by a powerful forces in this life, which is why it's hard to just change. But does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about valuation just a little bit more, and then we'll move on to talking about this model that I think we could actually use. In the citadels of Maya, Baba says the falsehoods of vitiated thinking, which is spring from the initial mistakes in valuation. They are a side product of psychic activity, which consists in the pursuit of certain accepted values, like the major decisions we make in our career, in our marriage, in our home. Oh, I want to, have this want and not that want. But false beliefs derive from their being and vitality from deep-rooted wishes that are nourished by false seeking. False beliefs are nourished by false seeking are the citadels of Maya. And the rising or the facing the wants, then the ideals, and then the values of our decisions in that order can really help us reduce them. Let me see if there's anything else I want to read from part 1 of false values. I think I've made the point repeatedly that Baba gives us this idea, and again, it's conscious. We can look at it, we can put those values on the table and think, what are we actually doing? We can do that, and that's a great gift that he has given us. And we don't have to spend 2 years on a psychoanalyst's couch. 2 years, it'd be 10 years. We don't even have to try to, you're welcome to, and it's wonderful to explore, energetic counseling or whatever. But it's not necessary, according to what Baba is saying, to make progress in happiness. Okay, so I want to present this 5-part model, but first I want to talk just a tiny bit about what are values. What are values, true values? And I think of true values, I call true values facets on the gem of truth. Facets on the gem of truth. There is a beautiful gem of truth, and it has many facets that shine, and those are true values. And the beauty of true values is that they are always true. They are never false. They are true in every situation. They are true in every problem. They are always true. I'm going to read just a little tiny sampling of, there are many, many lists of values online. You can print out a list of values. A lot of folks don't really understand true values. A lot of folks that write about values don't really understand what they are. They are assets. They are facets on the gem of truth. So if something is ever not true, it's not a true value. So I'm just going to mention the 12 that I picked out from this list: authenticity, compassion, boldness, generosity, determination, honesty, humorfulness, kindness, loyalty, peacefulness, respect, and responsibility. And I was thinking about, it is correct, it is the case that as we use or as we practice true values, some might be emphasized and some might be less emphasized in any given situation. I was thinking of the idea of, giving money to a friend who is broke and can't afford their medicine. That would be generosity. And you wouldn't necessarily want to emphasize full honesty at that moment, although honesty would be true. At another time you might want to help your friend and say, can I help you get a job? Can I help you regularize your life so you're not, can I do anything to help you so that you're not periodically, dead broke? But at the moment of just helping the person, you would not necessarily want to use every single value to the forefront, but every single value would always be true. So, okay, now let me talk about this 5-step model of valuation based on the discourses. The first step, and I'm using the word conflict because Baba uses the word conflict, and I want to say something about the resolution of conflict for happiness. Through valuation, we are resolving the conflicts within ourselves. We can't change other people through the use of valuation. We can't change other people. I do think I have observed that extremely happy people get treated better in life than extremely unhappy people, because they do exude peace and contentment and kindness and charity and all kinds of wonderful things, but they also know what's important. And they're not sticky. If someone is not kind to them, they're not that concerned about it. They recognize it and they know that it's not for the best, but they can just accept it pleasantly, cheerfully, and move on. And that does tend to bring out the best in other people. But nevertheless, even very happy people who can tell what is important continually still cannot change other people. So I want to go through this model of conflict resolution, which has to do with resolving conflicts within ourselves. The first step is to summarize the conflict. And this is a written model, and this model needs to be used. If anyone wants to use it, they need a copy of this model to practice it. It is written. And I think when you're learning valuation, it is very important when you're learning all kinds of things, it's very important to write them out so you can go back and read. Summarize, the first step is summarize the conflict, be calm, specific, and stay in the present terms. Summarize the conflict. The second step is to look at your subjective wants, which are stimulating the conflict. This is a hard one. Mayor Baba says all true valuation is the conquest of the subconscious mind by the conscious mind. Values are of the conscious mind. Bring to consciousness the unconscious wants and fears that are driving the conflict on your part. The third step is to meditate and recognize the comprehensive ideal which you wish to uphold in resolving the conflict. Because again, Baba says that behind every successful valuation is a comprehensive ideal. And then the fourth step is to choose, and I say at least 3 values to guide the resolution of the conflict. Just choose values that you want to enact in your resolution of the conflict. And then the last step, the 5th step, is to make a behavior action plan to enact those values to resolve the conflict. And Baba says that that action chosen must be firm with unswerving fidelity. Those are his words, unswerving fidelity to true values. And so what I've done is I've chosen 2 conflicts in my own life, real conflicts that I have faced, and applied this model of conflict resolution. So, as examples. So the first conflict that I'm going to summarize is when a friend in the Baba community severely insulted and backbit another friend. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny. But I think we've all been through that particular conflict living in this community, where we hear one person that we value and respect backbite another person that we value and respect. So that is the conflict. Okay, so what are my subjective wants that were driving this conflict? I'm listening to this person backbite and I'm getting anxious. What am I going to say? So what are my subjective wants? Well, I want both people to like me. My subjective wants and fears are that I want the person that I'm listening to, I want them to like me, and I want the person that they are backbiting to like me. Okay, that's my fear. I don't want to lose either relationship. That's my fear. Okay, well, I can deal with that fear. I have no choice if I'm to resolve the conflict. But the next step is to meditate upon the comprehensive ideal which I wish to uphold in resolving the conflict. And again, that is found in volume 1, page 72. And the comprehensive ideal in that conflict is respect and love for both people. It is the comprehensive ideal of love and respect. And I would say that the comprehensive ideal is always, basically always, an aspect of love. The comprehensive ideal to resolve conflicts is an aspect of love. But it's important to bring it to conscious awareness as you take steps to resolve the conflict. Okay, so then I'm going to choose 3 values which guide resolution of this conflict. And again, the conflict is listening to severe criticism. I want to bring the value of honesty. I want to bring the value of respect for all parties. And I want to bring the value of compassion for all parties, for what people suffer when they are drawn and brought to severe criticism, what they are suffering, and what the suffering of the person who's being severely criticized. So I want to bring those values. And in the basis of recognizing the conflict of backbiting, of recognizing my fear of wanting to be liked and not wanting to offend anyone, and overcoming that fear for the sake of the comprehensive ideal of love for both parties, and choosing the values of honesty, respect, and compassion, my action plan is to say, to enact true valuation, is to say, I care about you both, I respect you both, I have good experiences with you both. And I would say, and this might be just because I've been practicing psychology since the 1970s, I can very easily check in with people, and I could say to the person, and I recommend this, to say, can you understand that? Do you understand that I have respect and concern for both parties, for you and for this other person? And the person might not understand that. They might say, no, but you're not understanding. This person really mistreated me. They did a terrible thing. And then you say again, I do understand that you are in a lot of pain and you felt terribly mistreated. And I really do understand that. And I understand how much that hurts when that happens in this community. I understand how painful it is when that happens among people who are basically going to spend the rest of their lives together and who talk all the time about love. And love, you know, in the Avatar's Infinite Love, we're always talking about love, and singing songs, love. And I understand that it really hurts when that love feels betrayed. But I also have to say that I care and value and respect both parties. And I hope you can accept that. So that's a 5-step conflict resolution based on valuation. I'm going to give another example from my real life. Oh no, did I put it in here? I can do it from memory if I didn't. Okay. Or I can remember the conflict and I can use the mind. Okay. So this is a real conflict in my life outside of this community. My neighbor, a person who lives close to me, has 2 huge dogs. This is country life. Oh, it's the peace and solitude of country life. This neighbor has two huge dogs, a German Shepherd and a huge pit bull. And every night, and there's a backstory to this conflict, every night at maybe 9 to 10 o'clock, she lets them out. Now, the way my home is situated, this is not a close neighbor. There's a long private road on our land which goes down there. And so I would only see or hear these dogs if I drove out or I drove in or somehow at night, late at night. Now, the actual neighbor who has since moved, and I don't think he moved because of the dogs, but it didn't help. I mean, he offered to solve this problem country style. Which he said to the neighbor, if your dogs come on my property again, I'm going to shoot them, which is the way people solve problems in the country. Could never solve that problem. First of all, I would never harm a dog under any circumstances. Plus, I'm not able to use firearms. I would not be able to use firearms. I would, under certain circumstances, I might try, but I don't think I would be very good at it since I'm a very nervous person. I don't think I would be good at firearms. At any rate, I wouldn't offer to shoot a dog. He did. But there is a bit of a conflict because one night I went out late at night to check the mail because we had forgotten to check the mail, and I really wanted to know if I was going to get a particular piece of mail. And so I forgot about the dogs and drove up to the mailbox and lowered the window, and these terrifying dogs, I could pull up the window as fast as possible, and there was no way that I was going to lower that window again. Country life, the solitude, the peace. So I drove back in. Okay. So that is a conflict. So what are my subjective wants stimulating that conflict? Now obviously I have a subjective want of not having a huge penis. I'm going to just say something from my own personal history. When I lived in Oregon, I specialized in the psychological effects of pit bull maulings. I actually did that. There's a very large legal law firm in the city in which I lived, and they specialized. They had people coming from all over the state of Oregon to do pit bull maulings, and I specialized in evaluating children who had been mauled by pit bulls. And anytime I tell people, my voice, never, I don't care how loyal, how intelligent, how wonderful that pit bull is, never have a pit bull with a strange child that they don't know. Have your pit bull such that strangers will not come into the yard. Okay, going forward, what were my subjective wants? In addition to that, I don't want to be bitten, or if not killed by those dogs. I also, I have a subjective want, as we all do. We're all Americans. We have a right to move freely, all that kind. I want to be able to open my car door, whenever I want to. Okay. And my resolution, this might be surprising, so I have that want. I want to be free. I have a right to be free. I have a right to come out here, and when this person is an irresponsible person and I'm a responsible person. So all that kind of stuff is my subjective wants. Okay. Meditate upon the ideal that I wish to uphold. What is the ideal that I wish to uphold in this conflict? I wish to uphold the ideal of peace. I wish to uphold the ideal of the ideal of, in a sense, live and let live. I wish to uphold the ideal of understanding. And I also, I'm not going to knock on that lady's door under any circumstances. Me and what army would knock on her door. But I truly do. I wish to uphold the ideal of peace and leaving people alone. I don't know what that person is dealing with. I don't want to judge them. I wish to uphold the ideal of non-judgment. So what I am doing at this point, so the next step is to choose 3 values that to guide the resolution of the conflict. And again, I would choose the value of peacefulness, of humorfulness, of compassion, and what I have decided to do is nothing. Now, I'm free to do nothing, because the only time that I would be confronted with those dogs is late at night, driving around, getting out of my car late at night. So I choose the action plan of, and this is, I wrote out better notes than this for my 5 steps, and I don't have it. So I wrote out better notes than I choose to do nothing. But that is basically what I choose to do. My action plan is to leave it be. The dogs do not come onto my land in a way that disturbs me. And so my action plan is to understand and accept the culture of where I have chosen to live. And that, by the way, is a very, very important part of valuation. Know where you are and know that you choose to be there. That is honesty. You choose to be where you are. That is the jewel of honesty. And people always say, no, I don't choose it. No, I don't. Yes, you do. You really do choose it. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. You really do choose it. So I choose to be there, and I choose to accept the lifestyle of those folks and accept the situation and do nothing. That's my action plan. And it's based on those steps. So if anyone would like to use this model, this 5-step model, to resolve conflict, I will share. I'll leave copies here in Circle of Friends, and it's a model that if you wanted to bring to consciousness true valuation, what I would do is I would do this several times a day for like 30 days. Really do a valuation journal. Really know the values that are guiding your choices. And how that is working. Okay. Thank you very much for my opportunity to do my thumping. I enjoyed it very much, and I hope it's helpful to someone.
Thank you.